Welcome to the Tuesday, July 8th, regular closed session meeting of the EBMUD Board of Directors. Roll call, please, Madam Secretary.
Director Chan is absent. Director Gomez?
Here.
Director Katz is en route. Director Lewis?
Here.
Director Odie?
I'm here.
Director Smith?
Present.
President Young?
I am here. Okay, move on to public comment. If members of the public are online and wish to speak on agenda or non-agenda items, please use the raise your hand feature in Zoom. Do we have any speakers online?
No online public comment.
Okay, is there anyone, I have one card. If there's anyone else in the room that has an item, please come forward. But right now, I will take Eric Larson. And as you know, you have 3 minutes, and identify yourself and who you're with and all of that good stuff.
Good morning, President Young and board members and General Manager Chan. My name's Eric Larson, President AFSCME Local 444. I actually didn't know I had a card in, but I did want to take an opportunity.
Oh, it's probably for the regular meeting, no? Oh, it was for this morning's, never mind.
No. I did. Gonna come up anyways.
It got just left on my desk from.
Thank you, board members. Director Young, Director Lewis, Director Gomez, Director Odie, Director Smith. Thank you for the hard work that you put into helping us achieve a fair and equitable contract. I know there was a lot of extra hours and dedication put into it, and I know a lot of tough deliberations on getting it done. I have never seen in my 16 years and 5 contracts that I've been through, the board take the amount of time and dedication that you put in, so I thank you. That's it.
It's an important thing, so you are welcome.
And thank you, Director Katz.
Okay, we will now convene in the boardroom to discuss closed session agenda item 1, and then to conference room 8 to discuss closed session agenda item 2. We're scheduled to return at 1:15. Welcome to the Tuesday, July 8th, regular meeting of the EBMUD Board of Directors. Roll call, please, Madam Secretary.
Director Chan is absent. Excused. Director Gomez?
Here.
Director Katz?
Yep.
Director Lewis?
Here.
Director Odie?
Here.
Director Smith?
Present.
President Young?
I am here. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we have no announcements from closed session. We will now move on to public comment. If there are members of the public online who wish to speak on agenda or non-agenda items, please use the raise your hand feature. Comments on the non-agenda items will be heard now. Comments on agenda items will be heard when that item is up for consideration. Madam Secretary, do we have any commenters online?
I have 3 hands online. I'm going to see if it's agenda. Actually, 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 hands at this time, and I will see if it's non-agenda or agenda.
Can you,
iPhone, you should be able to unmute your mic. Is this an agenda or non-agenda item?
Considered a non-agenda item.
Non-agenda item? Okay, hold on one moment, please. I'll come right back to you. C. Richardson, is this an agenda or a non-agenda item? C. Richardson, you should be able to unmute your mic.
Oh, yeah, a non-agenda item.
Okay, hold one moment, please. Nick Lawrence, you should be able to unmute your mic. Is this an agenda or non-agenda item? Nick Lawrence? We'll come back to you. Rochelle, you should be able to unmute your mic. Is this an agenda or non-agenda item?
Non-agenda?
Okay, we'll be back to you. One moment. Nick Lawrence, is this an agenda or non-agenda item?
Non-agenda item today.
Okay, we'll be back to you. I'm going to start with iPhone and I'll go back through the list.
That sounds fine?
iPhone user, you should be able to unmute your mic. Give me a moment to start the clock.
Wait a second, I didn't go through the instructions.
Go ahead.
Please state your name and affiliation if applicable, and the topic that you will be speaking to. Refrain from providing personal information such as your address or phone number during public comment. If these are needed, we will have you contact staff. The secretary will call you in order, and you have 3 minutes to speak. And the secretary will track time. And you should, if you're watching on Zoom, you will see a timer letting you know when your time is concluded.
Okay. iPhone user, you can begin.
Thank you. This is Elizabeth Grissetti. I am a retiree representative to the Retirement Board of EBMUD, and I'm calling about a non-agenda item because I'm talking about current retiree benefits. I know that today you will consider MOUs for active employees, which include some benefit enhancements. But I'm not talking about the current employees. I'm talking about current retirees. Current retirees have not had a health insurance benefit increase in over 20 years. This primarily impacts lower income retirees, those who have been retired long ago, and younger ones who are not yet eligible for Medicare and Social Security. When you consider the benefit increases today, consider that retirees who've been retired a while need and deserve the same kind of benefits as current retirees. And retirees have no vote on the board of directors or the retirement board. We are only advisory, and so this is the only way I know to make a request to the board of directors that maybe we can consider a increase to retiree benefits as well. And I hope that you consider that when you consider the MOU today. That's about it for the moment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have C. Richardson. You should be able to unmute your mic.
Done, can you hear me?
Yes, and your 3 minutes start now.
Thank you. This is Cynthia Richardson. I'm a longtime resident of Ward 7. I'm making this statement on behalf of EBMUD board constituents in general. The 2 ongoing investigations into Director Chan must end immediately. They were triggered by the unsubstantiated, emotionally charged accusation of a woman who publicly claimed racial profiling, an accusation that has now been proven false. EBMUD's own internal investigation, backed by video footage and staff testimony, found no wrongdoing by Director Chan, and instead concluded that she was the victim of a threat of violence under your own workplace safety policy. Let's be honest about what's happening here. The accuser was already upset when she encountered April in the parking lot. She was most likely fed up by the condescension and hypocrisy of a board that invokes equity and justice when convenient, but uses race to pursue internal political agendas. And that kind of exploitation is demonstrably racist in itself. This board often uses words like integrity, responsibility, and transparency, yet your conduct in this matter is transparently unethical. You violated your own written protocols by making the accusation in public before the investigation was complete. You followed that with a disturbing memo to EBMUD staff that actually praised the accuser and all but invited people to dredge up dirt on Director Chan. And finally, used this false accusation as a pretext to initiate 2 investigations into the possibility that April Chan may violate behavioral standards. And this is not governance. This is an obvious targeted campaign against Director Chan. April Chan has spent her time on this board doing exactly what a public servant should, asking hard questions, exposing financial irregularities, and protecting her district from an environmentally hazardous quarry project. And that is why she's facing investigations found on innuendo already proven false. Water is critical to human survival. You were elected to manage this essential resource, not to stage tribunals in the name of performative justice. And frankly, I don't believe social justice is your true concern. Race in this case has been used not to defend justice, but to muddy public discourse, sideline a colleague, and shield the board from much needed accountability. And if you care about public trust, about transparency, or about the core mission of EBMUD, end these investigations now. Stop wasting time, taxpayer money, and the public's patience. There's real work to be done. Our rates are going up. Infrastructure needs work. Drought looms. The list goes on. Investigate your own ethics and be the people you say you are. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is, I believe, Nick Lawrence.
Yes. Nick Lawrence.
Nick Lawrence is here. Can you hear me?
Yes, and your 3 minutes start now.
Greetings and thank you, Risha. Welcome to today's episode of A Dangerous Condition of Negligent Contracting. My name is Nick Lawrence on Tappan Terrace in Orinda. My email address is citizen@eastbaymud.org. As we all might recall, the Tappan Terrace roadway washed out in early 2020, 5 years ago, caused by rupture of East Bay Mud's 8-inch water main and the resulting flooding. After much back and forth, East Bay Mud agreed to fund several $1 million for the repairs necessary to restore the Tappan Terrace roadway, to restore vehicle access to my neighbors' homes, and separately, but only after being cited by the La Miranda Fire Department, to restore the sole Tappan Terrace fire hydrant. The settlement agreement provided that Engineered Soil Repairs, Incorporated of Walnut Creek, called ESR, would make those repairs and that a contingency fund be created to cover contingencies that might arise. As would be expected in a project of this size, contingencies have arisen, including that, during the course of repairs, significant damage was caused to my property by ESR and by the theft of materials from my property by on-duty East Bay Mud employees. Damage to my property will cost me $22,064.55 for my contractor to fix. Also, my neighbor at 319 Tappan Terrace suffered repeated damage to her property due to ESR's negligence. The contingency fund held by Brian Miles contains sufficient funds to resolve these claims. I appear here today to request that the board direct Brian Miles to disperse directly to me the $22,064.55 needed for the repairs to my property. Are there any questions?
We are prohibited from discussing the item because it's a non-agenda item, Mr. Lawrence, but I will direct staff to respond to your information memo for the board and to respond to you following that.
Thank you, Risha. Appreciate that.
That was Director Young.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you, Director Young.
Okay.
I'll yield the rest of my time. Thank
Last
you.
up is
Rochelle.
Rochelle.
Rochelle, you should be able to unmute your mic.
Good
And
afternoon, board members. My name is Rochelle Kagampan, and I'm a resident on Tappan Terrace, Orinda. As you most likely are aware of and mentioned by Nick Lawrence, our road was damaged in the early part of 2000 due to a broken pipe underneath our private road. And the road has been repaired by Engineered Soil Repairs, or ESR, as funded by EBMUD, and was completed recently in 2025, 5 years after the incident. And as a result of the road repair, I am filing a claim for damages. I would like to request EBMUD to direct the remaining contingency funds awarded to the Tappan Terrace residents to pay for my repairs. I maintain that ESR, the contractor of choice, was grossly negligent and is responsible and liable for all the damages caused by the Tappan Terrace roadwork, as enumerated below. The replacement cost of the mailbox and repair, which is $2,250, which does not include electrical work that is part of the mailbox lighting. This for an additional $1,500 to repair. I also spent $750 to temporarily repair the mailbox, which is necessary so I could receive mail. Again, these damages were a result of the mailbox being negligently knocked over many times by ESR. So the total is $4,500. And also number 2, the base wires and conduit of the cable box next to the mailbox have also been have also been exposed and left unrepaired, and also caused by the mailbox repeatedly being knocked over from the pedestal by ESR. The total repair cost is $1,500. Number 3 is the trench drains. They were clogged because of the loose soil from the slide repair. I have photos substantiating the soil and mud around the house, and that would cost me $1,000. And I have loose soil dumped by ESR to repair the road, which dispersed significant dust, soil, mud, debris, and fumes on my properties. And this is due to their negligence and some prevailing winds. Note that my neighbor located above my property, Nick Lawrence, was offered a resolution payment for the cleaning of his property, including the window, exterior house, and driveway. And to approve the payment of a similar claim by another property owner and to deny my claim when I am adjacent to the repaired site would be unjust and discriminatory. So the total cleaning claim cost is $5,360 with a overall total claim cost of $12,360. That doesn't include the electricity and water. So my request from ESR is to pay for damages which was literally being ignored. And I would appreciate if EBMUD could please attend to this matter and direct or order Brian Miles, the assigned holder of the trust or funds or the contingency funds, to release the remaining funds so we can finally have some closure and so I can live peacefully on my property. That's all. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your comments. I'll direct that the same information memo be prepared by staff, and they will be in touch following that.
I do have a question for the speaker. Has all of that been presented in a written claim to East Bay Mud? Have you filed a written claim?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any additional speakers online for public comment?
None.
Okay, I have one card. I assume this is for a non-agenda item. Mimi Bull.
Yes.
Yes, right up here. Your name and affiliation, if you have any, what ward you live in if you're a customer, which looks like you are. And then you'll have 3 minutes.
East Bay Mud is bullying, see the statement attached, and threatening without cause. For example, they sent a letter saying failure to provide adequate access to the water meter prior to your next scheduled meter reading may result in the vehicle being towed at vehicle owner's expense. It is legal but stupid to install a water meter in a driveway where you expect to find parked cars. We are seeking legal advice to discover some way to move the meter out of the driveway or install an electronic reading device that may solve this problem so that East Bay Mud can read the water meter anytime they want, and we can park in our driveway whenever we need to do so. In March of 2005, East Bay Mud sent a statement for $00. In May, they sent 2005, they sent a statement, $2,049.29 due now. We discussed 2 years of paying $100 extra per billing cycle to pay off the 3.5 years of billing errors by East Bay Mud. And at the end of 2 years, East Bay Mud promised to extend the time if needed to pay the balance. However, East Bay Mud is demanding a balloon payment in 2 years. The June 30, 2025 statement is confusing. East Bay Mud is saying one thing and writing something entirely different, exposing a trust issue. This is not an honest effort to solve a problem that East Bay Mud created, but East Bay Mud's intent is to blame the customer for their error. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bull. We have Andrew Lee, who's our Director of Customer Service, standing up right now to go talk with you about your situation. If you'd care to join him outside the boardroom, he'd be happy to work through this with you right now. He's right here. He's walking to the back of the room. Thank you. Okay. We will now go to committee reports, unless there are any other speakers. Okay. The minutes for the June 24th Sustainability Committee and the Finance Administration Committee's meetings are provided in the agenda materials. We'll now get an update from this morning's Planning and Legislative Planning Committee and the Legislative and Human Resources Committee meetings. For the Planning Committee, Director Gomez, are you prepared to report?
It's actually Director Lewis.
Oh, sorry, it's in alphabetical order. Director
problem.
Lewis.
Good morning. We had several presentations, including a presentation on the fiscal year 2025 pipeline rebuild program update. I think the big highlight for the board was the fact that we've exceeded our 25-mile rebuild effort. And there was a lot of additional good information. The committee accepted that report. We also received a report from the Center for Smart Infrastructure, which really was focused on efforts to work collaboratively with other organizations to ensure the delivery of clean water and to do so efficiently. That report was accepted by the committee. We also heard from Water Forum 2050 update and the plans to continue working. The committee did ask going forward that, and at the time the board is asked to accept the report, that we get a little more detail about the individual goals going forward. And then last but not least, we had a presentation on erosion threat to the McCollum Wild and Scenic River after a wildfire. I can tell you we were left almost in silence briefly. And that was presented by Amador Water Agency Director Rich Farrington, who's also the UMRA representative, along with a very, very impressive background in engineering and water. He's also served the public as a director since 2012.
Okay, thank you. And then the Legislative Human Resources Committee, Director Gomez.
So the Legislative and HR Committee met earlier today, and we received a report on the modernization of Recruitment and Classification Division. It was a really good report from Cindy, the Director of Human Resources, and Vincent James, the Manager of Recruitment and Classification. We, for the first time in East Bay MUD history, have a 5-year strategic plan for human resources, which we felt was really wonderful. And there are some key areas, including driving excellence and innovation, deploying recruitment and retention strategies, enhancing the employee experience through culture and employee engagement, and investing in workforce planning and development. So it's a good report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to put a underscore under the presentation made by Dr. Farrington this morning about the hazards of debris flow following major wildfire in our watershed. And just thank him for bringing that to our attention and applaud the work that UMRA is doing to address prevention in our upper watershed. We'll now move to consider the consent calendar, items 1 through 12. Are there any board members who wish to pull or discuss any items on the consent calendar? Okay, I have no cards for questions on the consent calendar, so I just need a motion.
I move the consent calendar.
Second.
Okay, moved by Director Gomez, seconded by Director Lewis to move items 1 through 12 on the consent calendar. We have a voice vote on this. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Okay, the motion passes 6-0. We will now move on to agenda item, as everybody leaves because their items were approved. Have a good rest of your afternoon. We're now on agenda item 13.1, which is to conduct a public hearing to consider objections and protests to the general manager's report to transfer delinquent East Bay MUD charges to the 25-26 property tax rolls. The public hearing is now open. This is a public hearing to consider objections and protests to the general manager's report to transfer delinquent East Bay MUD charges to the 25-26 property tax rolls. If there is anyone present regarding this item, staff is located just outside the boardroom and can assist you in making payment arrangements and provide information related to delinquent charges. If there are speakers online that have questions or require assistance, please contact Max Lowe at 510-287-0341 for assistance. I'm going to repeat that number again. For questions or assistance, contact Max Lowe at 510-287-0341. We will now receive public comment. If there are members of the public who are online and wish to speak on this item, please use the raise your hand feature in Zoom. Madam Secretary, are there any speakers online or in attendance that have presented cards to object or protest the actions being considered by the board?
None.
Okay. Then we will, Madam Secretary, are there any new, well, okay, let's skip that because there weren't any speakers. We'll now actually close the hearing. I need a motion and a second to close the hearing.
Motion to close the hearing. Second.
Moved by Director Odie, seconded by Director Katz to close the public hearing. We need a voice vote. All those in favor of closing the public hearing?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Any abstain? The motion passes 6-0. So the public hearing then is now closed. We're now on to agenda item 13.2, which is to adopt the general manager's report dated June 10th, 2025, and to authorize the general manager to exclude from the report any affected parcels or amounts as appropriate, including those that the district receives payment for on or before August 10th, 2025. The date in which the report will be sent to Alameda and Contra Costa counties, and agenda item 13.3 to authorize the transfer of delinquent East Bay MUD charges to the Alameda and Contra Costa counties 25-26 property tax rolls. Again, that date is August 10th, 2025, for which payment must be received. We will now again receive public comment. If there are members of the public online and wish to speak on this item, it says right.
I know.
Okay.
I'm ready to go.
Use the raise your hand feature in Zoom. Are there any speakers online or cards received for public comment?
No public comment.
Okay, great. Is there any board discussion or comments on this item? Seeing none, do I have a motion and a second to adopt the resolution that covers items 13.2 and 13.3?
So moved. Second.
Moved by Director Smith, seconded by Director Katz to adopt the resolutions for 13.2 and 13.3. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Okay, motion passes 6-0. We will now move on to agenda items 14.1, which is to conduct a public hearing pursuant to the Health and Safety Code Section 5473. ETSEC, is that the right pronunciation? Related to the collection of wet weather facilities charges on the Alameda and Contra Costa County 25-26 property tax rolls. That public hearing is now open. Written protests or objections must have been mailed and received by the district or provided to the secretary before the close of this public hearing. Secretary, have we received any written objections or protests that must be read as part of the public hearing?
None.
Okay, and we will take comments or protests on the report at this time. Please do not provide any identifying information such as your address or phone number. If this information is needed after your comments, you'll be directed to contact staff. And is there anyone in attendance to provide comment or protest the actions to be considered by the board? Looks like not. Are there any online speakers?
None.
There are none. Okay. If online, if you have questions, you can contact staff at 510-287-1984. Again, that number is 510-287-1984. Okay, we will now close the public hearing, and I need a motion and a second
So
to close
moved
the hearing.
to close the hearing.
I'll second.
Moved by Director Odie, seconded by Director Gomez to close the public hearing. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Motion passes 6-0. The public hearing is now closed. Now we will move on to agenda items 14.2 to 14.4, and we will vote on each item separately. The district has 178,116 parcels that are subject to wet weather facilities charges in the amounts listed in the report. The Secretary of the district has advised that the district has received have we received any valid protests? No valid protests have been received from the record owners of parcels listed in the report and upon which the wet weather facilities charge is proposed to be collected on the property tax rolls. Based on the number of valid protests, that being none, submitted prior to the close of the public hearing, a majority protest does not exist for adoption of the report. Accordingly, the report may be adopted and the wet weather facilities charge may be collected on the fiscal year 25-26 property tax rolls for Alameda and Contra Costa counties for EBMUD's fiscal year 2026 on approval by the board. For item 14.2 is to adopt the written report and authorize the district to collect the FY 2025 wet weather facilities charge on the Alameda and Contra Costa County property tax rolls by at least 2/3 members of the board. Is that of the board present? Or
board
the
members.
board?
The entire board, so we need 5 votes.
So we need 5 votes, okay. Can I have a motion and a second to approve item 14.2?
So moved.
Moved by Director Gomez,
Second?
seconded by Director Lewis. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Passes by 6-0. Item 14.3 is to authorize district staff to adjust the FY 2026 wet weather facilities charge for any affected parcels as new information is provided by the counties. May I have a motion and a second to approve item 14.3?
So moved.
Moved by Director Smith,
Second.
seconded by Director Katz, to approve item 14.3. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Passes by a vote of 6-0. Item 14.4 is to direct the Secretary of the District to file a copy of the report on or before August 10th, 2025, with the Alameda County Auditor Controller and the Contra Costa County Auditor Controller. I need a motion and a second to approve item 14.4.
Excuse me.
Yes.
This may be somewhat out of order, but to the extent that the counties provide additional information, is the property owner given an opportunity to respond?
You know, Kathy?
Can you come to the mic, please? Thank you.
Usually if I'm notified, it's to take a charge off, so the county has already spoken with the parcel owner. I haven't gotten a request to put a
So
charge off.
that's great if they take it off. What if they raise it?
Oh, we wouldn't raise it because it's based on our charge.
It's our charges that we
Yeah.
approved as part of our non-218.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Right, those were approved as our charges under our non-Prop 218 rates and charges, right?
Yes.
Are they 218 or non?
218.
Sorry, 218, sorry. Okay, so I need a motion and a move by Director Lewis, seconded by Director Odie to approve item 14.4. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Passes by a vote of 6-0. Okay, the full service motion and second for public hearings is now done.
Thank you.
General Manager Chan?
Yes, so first up is our legislative update, and we have Kathy Viatelli here to provide that update.
Okay, thank you, General Manager Chan. Good afternoon, President Young and members of the board. I am here to give two updates. I'll give a state legislative update and then I'll give a federal update. So last week, the legislature passed and the governor signed the final fiscal year 2025-26 budget that contains sweeping and transformative CEQA reforms to speed up the permitting of housing and infrastructure projects. The CEQA reforms were contained in two budget trailer bills, AB 130 and SB 131. And when I reported to you last month, they had passed the budget, the legislature. There was a two-party agreement. It was between the Assembly and the Senate. This now is the agreement between the three parties, the Senate, the Assembly, and the governor. And so between then and last week, they had been negotiating this package. And when they signed this final package that had these sweeping reforms, the governor issued a statement and stated that the reforms were decades in the making, and the bills were part of a comprehensive streamlining package that breaks down long-standing development barriers and modernizes CEQA review for critical housing and infrastructure, and creates new tools to speed up production, reduce costs, and improve accountability across the state. So this was a significant policy and political endeavor that was pushed through at the end, which they had been foreshadowing in their conversations and in policy bills, and even at the beginning of the legislature this year when the governor and the legislature had set out what their priorities were for the budget, which was really to focus on housing and affordability and some other issues. So I'm going to walk through the two bills and talk about what the implications are for statewide policy and also for the district. And then I'm going to explain a little bit about the budget trailer bill process, because it's different from the normal policy bill process. Those of you that have worked in the legislature with the legislature maybe understand that, but I think for the benefit of the whole, I'll walk you through it. So the first bill, AB 130, which was a budget trailer bill, was a housing-related trailer bill, and this bill was actually spearheaded by one of our members, Assemblymember Buffy Wicks. So it contained a CEQA exemption for urban infill housing on not more than 20 acres. So currently, under California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA, the process is that projects with potentially significant environmental effects must prepare an environmental impact report and a mitigative negative declaration. But this is current law, certain smaller infill projects, which are 5 acres or less, may be eligible for a categorical exemption under CEQA guidelines if they are located on a site, as I mentioned, of 5 acres or less in an urban area, substantially surrounded by urban uses, consistent with planning and zoning, free of significant environmental effects or sensitive habitat, and adequately served by utilities. So what AB 130 does is it broadens the infill exemption by creating a new standalone statutory exemption for infill housing projects. Specifically, the bill exempts from CEQA any housing project that is no more than 20 acres, located in incorporated municipalities or urbanized areas, so that's a broadening of the definition, is in a site with prior urban development or adjacent to a site with urban development, is consistent with local general plans and zoning, and includes a Phase 1 environmental site assessment with remediation if necessary. So because these qualifying projects would bypass now CEQA review, The District 1 would not receive the usual environmental documents that outline water supply or wastewater needs, and that really results in fewer opportunities for our staff for early coordination on the infrastructure impacts to the district. But 2, and importantly, it eliminates the requirement for a project proponent to obtain a water supply assessment from EBMUD. So in response to the first concern, coordination would occur when a developer comes in to the district to request a water service later in the development process. But as for the second concern, staff are right now assessing kind of what is the significance of eliminating the water supply assessment requirement for these kinds of projects. And to give you some background on water supply assessments, those of you that have been on the board for a while know the history. This was a flagship policy of EBMUD in partnership with the California Farm Bureau, actually. So it started nearly 25 years ago, or maybe even before that, back in 1995. There was legislation by then Senator Jim Costa that actually created this process that connects water with land use planning. And it set out in the water code requirements for any sort of project proponent to go through the local planning agency. And then if it was a project that was over 500 units, the local planning agency, which would be a city or a county, would have to come to the public water system to request a water supply availability analysis to determine that there was sufficient water supply available for that project. That was incorporated into the water code, so whenever they had a project that under CEQA had to obtain an environmental impact report, they'd have to request this assessment. That policy was then further updated in 2001 with 2 bills, which was SB 610, again by Senator Costa, and then SB 221 by Senator Kuehl. And those projects put in more sort of specific requirements, set a time frame for the completion of those water supply assessments of 90 days. We'd have to complete those. Expanded the information that was to be included in the water supply assessment, and then also dealt with the Subdivision Act. So if they were seeking a Subdivision Act, sort of a subdivisions where they have to they wanted to subdivide the property and they had to prepare a map, they also had to obtain this information to determine the availability of water supply. So given that this is a significant change now because they're no longer required to do this, and we're looking at this right now, sort of what are the impacts to the district and what are the remedies, and I'll come back and I'll talk some more about that because I want to link in the other trailer bill too. But before I go on, just a couple of other things that were in AB 130. For development projects that use the CEQA exemption, there's also now a dedicated and time-bound process for tribal consultation, which is different from the current CEQA requirements, which were set out in another bill called SB 52. So they've created a different process for tribal consultations that actually puts some time constraints on the consultation project process. And then the project proponents that secure the CEQA exemption, they have to comply with labor standards, including paying prevailing wage on affordable housing projects. Now, this exemption applies to all housing, but they have to pay prevailing wage on affordable housing projects and requires the use of skilled and trained workforce for buildings that are over 85 feet in height. It also freezes new residential building standards and codes until 2031, with exceptions for emergencies, fire, and conservation-related updates. So if they're doing water reuse, for example, in the project, they couldn't sort of freeze those standards. So that's what's in 130. Questions?
Does this allow anyone to circumvent any projects in which the district's already taken a position that no, we're unable to provide or service that particular project?
I don't believe it's retro. I don't believe it's retro. Basically, so one of the things with budget trailer bills, they go into effect immediately, and it was signed last Monday. So anything that where we had taken a position before that, they can't go back and claim this exemption under the bill. So they've already come to us.
They can't make a new application or request?
Well, they could make a new application currently if they had decided to. But as far as I know, and David Brenstrom is not in the room, I don't know that any of the water supply assessments that we have done of late, and I don't think there have been many, actually have said we do not have sufficient water to supply a project. Because for these projects, these are infill projects on 20
They're
acres.
within our urban service boundary.
And they're within our urban service boundary, correct. We're not talking about projects like Tassajara outside our urban service boundary, which I can answer that
Actually,
question.
we do.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, thank you.
But specifically within the urban service boundary. So urban might still be a little bit vague.
It's broadened, yes. Yeah.
But it does mean, doesn't change the urban limit line.
Correct, correct. So the other trailer bill, SB 131, this bill was broader, didn't just apply to housing, so it had CEQA exemptions for infrastructure projects, and this one was spearheaded by Senator Scott Wiener. He's from San Francisco. So it exempts several types of projects from the CEQA review. It exempts rezoning, so you could rezone that implements any kind of approved housing element. That's exempt from CEQA review. Advanced manufacturing. So advanced manufacturing is defined in the bill. It's defined out of a definition that comes from a statute that deals with sort of transportation infrastructure projects. However, that is a program that is used to provide sort of a sales tax credit and really encourage the development of new manufacturing and jobs in the state of California. So it's a little bit confusing, and the definition is broadly defined. But it's basically when they define advanced manufacturing facilities, they're referring to manufacturing processes that improve or create entirely new materials, products, or processes through the use of science and technologies. And those science and technologies could be related to kind of the semiconductor industry, nanotechnology, advanced material, or biotech. So it's not really clear from the reference to this definition what they actually are referring to as advanced manufacturing. And that was brought up as some concerns about what are we talking about, that those types of projects could now actually obtain an exemption.
Well, I'll hold my questions.
The other exemptions would apply to wildfire risk reduction projects, which could benefit the district, and these could include things like prescribed fire, defensible space clearances, and fuel breaks, but there's some conditions built into that. Water and wastewater projects could be benefit from the sixth CEQA exemption, but they have to be projects that benefit small disadvantaged community water systems or state small water systems, some of which have a current exemption, CEQA exemption. It would extend that, and then it would create a new one tied to some policy last year that dealt with extending wastewater and sanitation services to these small community systems that don't have them. And then other projects that could benefit from this CEQA exemption include agricultural employee housing, public park or non-motorized recreational trail facilities that are funded with Prop 4 dollars, the climate bond, daycare centers, rural health clinics, nonprofit food banks or food pantries, and high-speed rail facilities. So some of the stations for high-speed rails and things like that are also envisioned. And then any updates to the state's climate adaptation strategy planning document could also benefit from the CEQA exemption. The other thing that this bill does, and this is just in the world of CEQA of interest, it constrains CEQA review for projects that narrowly fail to qualify for a CEQA exemption. So in other words, if a housing project would qualify for a CEQA exemption in AB 130, for example, but for a single condition of that project makes it not eligible, then the CEQA review for the housing project is limited to the environmental effects caused by that single condition. So if that makes sense. So there could be like one single thing that makes it not eligible for the exemption. So they'd have to do CEQA, they'd have to focus on that single condition. And then the environmental impact reports for those, what they call near-miss projects, are not required to include in any discussion of the alternatives to the project, any of the growth-inducing impacts or whatever those alternatives may be. So that's another provision that went through the bill. And then it also makes a change to the administrative record that lead agencies are required to compile by excluding staff notes and internal agency communications. So that could make it more streamlined for preparing the administrative record as part of any CEQA review. So That's overall. So why don't I stop there in case you have any questions about how this applies? These are very large sweeping policy changes and big bills. And we are still going through our internal analysis with staff and with different part divisions within EBMUD to understand what are the impacts and what this means. But what we are well aware of is the changes that this makes to flagship policies of which we have had a hand in shaping over time and trying to explore how do we proceed. So I'll stop there and I'll answer any questions about this. And then I want to talk to you about the budget trailer process.
What would examples of, I mean, this is like the first thing in the SB 131, and then it's like goes on and on and on.
Yeah.
Of advanced manufacturing facilities in our service area. What comes to mind of things that are here now that would now be exempt?
So we've been trying to figure that out and having internal conversations. I can't give you kind of a complete definitive list, but questions that have come up have been, for example, could you convert a vacant commercial space into a data center? Is that an advanced manufacturing facility? It's not clear based on the language. Some new biotech industry, waste recycling, electronic waste recycling, is that an advanced manufacturing facility if it's using one of these innovative technologies? These are all things that we don't know. We don't know if these meet the definition, and we're trying to understand that a little better.
And then who decides whether something fits that definition? Each individual city, or?
This is all through the local planning agency, right? Okay. So my understanding is it goes through that process. So the cities and the counties that have that jurisdiction.
So there could be hundreds of interpretations of that.
Potentially, but I presume they will update guidelines related to this.
Other Director Katz?
Yeah, thank you for the update. I imagine that the agencies like the League of Cities, organizations like the League of Cities, and all of the cities and counties in our state will have a much broader scope of concerns in response to the legislation, and then for as you mentioned, the legislation has some aspects that make the planning process go smoother. So it's not that we would seek to, attack the bill that the legislature has passed, but we need to understand what its effects are. And, as, some members of the legislative budget committees were, as they proceeded to vote for the bill, that, was tied to the budget, that, the governor was sending a very strong signal, these two pieces of legislation must pass to be able to proceed with the budget. Several members of the budget committees were calling for so-called cleanup legislation without a lot of specificity. So this is a good opportunity to be thinking about what does cleanup mean for us, and I definitely agree with focusing on our flagship policy, that our former legislative advocate Randy Knaus would refer to as show me the water, as the kind of colloquial name of the policy. So some ways that I think of the way we practically benefit from this policy, there's a statewide implication. We have this framework doesn't just benefit the district directly, it benefits the whole statewide water situation. So we've helped ensure that the planning process in every community around the state doesn't have development happening that outpaces any local community's ability to secure water supply. We have good planning, but we weren't just thinking about, requiring ourselves to have good planning. We were thinking about avoiding unsustainable planning statewide, because that unsustainable situation was predictably going to lead to resource constraints that would affect the district. So I think that approach, we're not just looking at our service boundary when we're thinking about what are the implications here. We were thinking about statewide interests, and that we are one California in terms of despite balkanized water supply water rights arrangements, we see how that flows, pardon the pun, into problems for us. So that's one important thing. And then very directly, the water supply assessment is a critical tool for our conditioning of significant projects to adopt recycled water. It's not that we have ever denied a water supply assessment for a proposed project within our service boundaries. Nor could I really think of a housing project or a project that complies with local city zoning that I would want to delay or obstruct. It's that we want to make sure that there's efficient water use on site and that there's utilization of recycled water capabilities. And so the water supply assessment through the CEQA process has been the regulatory hook that we have used. So, we should either, look for a way to restore that hook, either through, whatever the legal form of whether, this remains a pure exemption or something in between a full exemption and a partial exemption, or just a totally different policy tactic or technique or mode, but we should, find a way to get ourselves back to the end result of being able to work with local developers to get recycled water utilized. Otherwise, our whole plan for utilizing the East Bay Shore project is not going to be the same. So that's a concern. There's still a lot of questions, so I'm not exhausting, everything that I might come up with later, but another thing that comes to mind, as you mentioned, advanced manufacturing and biotech is, biotech, I think, should be a very important economic development strategy for the East Bay, but it comes with reliability concerns. I say this is someone who has several facilities in my ward. We need to be examining reliability. And clusters have a benefit. There's a planning aspect to biotech that's, we haven't heavily regulated, but it is important because if you have a cluster, then you're able to maintain reliability in a more cost-effective way, and that reliability is very important for any individual water-intensive business that needs reliable access to supply to function without significant loss. So I'm not sure if that translates directly into heavy planning regulation, but it's a consideration that deserves discussion. And my last comment is just a question, which is as we work, hopefully relatively quickly this session and next session, or this session and next year to think about cleanup. While the impacts of the bill are still under study, will exempted projects still be reported to the state clearinghouse with a notice of exemption, or is the effects of this bill going to be invisible?
That's a really good question, Director Katz. I don't know. So I'll investigate that and get back to you. I'll report next time at the board. But I don't have an answer to that question. I presume even if you're taking advantage of the exemption, you would have to report. So, but I think that's cleanup if not. To your other points, I think these are the conversations we've been having internally, how basically by connecting the land use decision with water, many of these processes allow for that coordination and consultation with the developers. And so by removing this now, we don't have that opportunity. So we've been trying to think through what is the end game? What do we need to achieve? What do we want to achieve? And then how do we work back from that and what some revisions might look like? We don't know right now, so I think we're trying to figure that out and work with staff on that. To your point about the process, and I just want to talk about this a little bit, the budget trailer process is a very expedited process this year. Sometimes budget trailer bills can be introduced and they travel with the budget, right? They're meant to implement the budget and they come with it, the policy associated with the budget. But they don't go through a normal policy bill hearing process. A bill gets introduced, it goes to a policy committee, there's an opportunity for the public and the legislators, the members, to weigh in. If it has a fiscal impact, it goes to appropriations and then to the floor, and then it goes through the whole process a second time in the second house. That doesn't happen with the trailer bill. It moves quickly. Sometimes they can be introduced and then they can wait till later in the end of the summer if they're still working out issues. But this time, these literally happened within a matter of 1 week, 72 hours, in fact. You know, AB 30 was amended, and it was amended twice because there was some pushback from the labor unions. And then it was heard, and then it was adopted 72 hours later and then signed by the governor that evening. Same thing happened with SB 131. SB 131 had this interesting language. This was unprecedented. This set a new precedent where presumably it was somebody, I'm assuming it would have been the governor, put in language that said the passage of this bill is necessary in order for the entire budget to be adopted and approved. So the budget was contingent on the passage of the broader CEQA exemption reform. If it didn't pass, the budget would not have passed, and legislators would not have been paid. So it was embedded into the bill. I've never seen that before, and so it was really a clear indication of how important this was to the leadership and to the governor. So what we're trying to find right now are kind of constructive ways, and if there is going to be any cleanup, whether we can attach into that or we can come back with a different policy and look at this to address the things that we need to do, which you had pointed out so well, and sort of delineating what are some of the things that we need to focus on. So other questions about this, about the bills, the policy? And that is not to say, I mean, we want to preserve the water supply assessment requirements because, as you are right, it does have broader statewide application, and it could have application to us in the district. We just need to think through what those scenarios may be based on definitions and other things. And then it does have broader application. We actually, I wasn't with EBMUD at the time, but I've looked at the history and know some of the history from my previous work. We had partnered with the California Farm Bureau on this because, as then Senator Costa was concerned about impacts in the San Joaquin Valley, right? Impacts to groundwater supplies and other things. So other questions?
This language that was put in, that, do you think this may be the first time, but not the last time, that this is?
I'm not going to speculate.
Okay.
But, you know, more policy is being driven through budget trailer bills, and they did this, and it went through, and so it was, I think it was a surprise to many of us.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Is there
Jen?
more to your presentation?
I have a couple more things.
I'll wait to the end then.
Well, I'm going to talk about federal, so.
Oh, okay. So I'll just be quick then. I was one of those people that was in the legislature working, and to think 12 years ago that this would happen is just mind-boggling. But I understand the reason. I mean, CEQA was there to be a shield, right, to protect the environment, and people were using it as a sword. You know, you talked about those lists in Senator Wiener's bill. There was a food bank in the city of Alameda that wanted to move into a build on a parking lot, and then the opponents tried to use CEQA to stop it. So there's abuses, and I'm glad that stopped. But I want to associate with Director Katz's comments and just ask me, what is the plan to bring, you know, any particular proposal or cleanup language to like the Ledge HR committee? I mean, is that something we can expect to hear in August or September? Or?
Yeah, I don't want to put a time frame on it right now, but I do think we are trying to think through, okay, one, what are the impacts? And then what are the remedies? And this is complicated because there isn't a simple fix. I think we need to take our time and carefully consider what the fix is, because by doing a CEQA exemption, you've removed this from CEQA. So, and it's tied to CEQA. It's embedded in CEQA. So we need to look at what are the fixes for projects of this nature, right? These advanced manufacturing facilities, and presumably, and for projects that are 20 acres or less. So we are doing that. We will bring something back. We go through our process where we solicit from staff, which we've just started to do now, and have internal discussions about potential legislation for 2026. We will invite you into that process as well and have conversations, and we welcome your thoughts. And then we'll bring something back. So we would bring something back, I think, officially if we decide to do something in 2026, next year when we present the state legislative priorities.
I just have one other thought or question, which is that given that Assemblymember Wicks once again has pushed a piece of legislation that has issues for us, is she aware of the concern that we have about the show me the water provisions?
Not at this moment, her staff. So, and I have to say, it wasn't, so she spearheaded the effort, but I think other members of our delegation were well on board with this.
Sure, no, clearly, everybody voted for it, but her
Yeah,
name's on it.
and have made housing
She's in our
their
delegation.
priority. So we want to have a conversation with her, but before we do have that conversation, I think we really need to sit down and think through, and hearing from you, what are some of the concerns, and how we then present this to her, and then come up with our process for what a remedy may look like. I don't want to go in until we've thought that through.
Yeah.
But we have talked to her staff.
I mean, one thing that strikes me as be particularly helpful would be to bring her examples of what would be, what are examples of of this going through. Right?
Yeah.
Director Lewis?
Yeah, I just want to say that I'd like to make sure that whatever we do, especially having just raised water rates, that we have an idea and transparency on what the impact is from a budget standpoint and our existing ratepayers.
Will do. All right. Any other questions? No? Okay. I commit here to you, I'll keep you informed as this moves forward, and whatever kind of discussions we have internally, if there's information, and then, have conversations about your feedback. So turning to Congress, not to be doom and gloom, but I'm going to be doom and gloom for a moment. So HR 1, effectively, it passed, the president signed it on the 4th of July, which was difficult. It effectively puts into place the Trump administration's spending priorities. I'm not going to go through all of it, but I will touch on a few things that are germane, I think, to the district. So it eliminates most of the unobligated Inflation Reduction Act program dollars. That's not a surprise. They were signaling they were going to do that. Most of the tax incentives for clean energy production will be phased out by 2027. However, carbon sequestration and geothermal tax credits will remain in place, and solar and wind production tax credits continue if construction begins within 12 months of the bill's enactment. Otherwise, projects must be in service by the end of 2027. The provision allows project sponsors that are doing projects to pay for environmental studies authorized with expedited reviews and constraints on judicial reviews, so if you're going through the federal NEPA process. And then it set aside $1 billion to support water conveyance and storage projects that are owned by the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation. So it doesn't single out any specific project, but I would imagine some of the things that they've been trying to do is make repairs to the aqueducts that are federal aqueducts that have been impacted by subsidence, and then look at other storage facilities. Though there's no active storage facility projects that I'm aware of right now that are federal, that are owned by the Bureau of Reclamation, that are ready to receive funds. And then it also increases, which you probably heard in the news, the debt ceiling to avoid defaulting on any existing debt obligations. So that is my federal update.
Did any of the public lands sales?
That came out, I believe that.
All of it?
I think most of that came out. Now, that's not to say they're not issuing permits for other activities on federal lands, but I don't believe that the sales went forward. Okay, any other questions? Okay, sorry, I hope to come back with cheerier news.
And what, in a couple of years?
Yes.
A quick comment for our general manager, the loss of some credits for renewable energy projects could affect the calculus for some projects that we may be evaluating on district land. So it would be good to hear about feasibility of completing any that are on the cusp between feasible or infeasible, depending on the phasing out of the credits at the next sustainability meeting, or if that's not going to happen for a while, by a memo to the board.
We don't have many, there's only 2 other projects that we're looking at.
Any other questions? Okay, We will now move on to agenda items 16.1 to 16.4 to take actions to the Memoranda of Understanding for AFSCME Locals 2019 and 444, IFPTE 21, and IUOE Local 39, as well as actions related to the salary and other benefits, revisions for senior management team members, managers, confidential employees, and non-represented employees. After quite a long time of work and diligence, the following relates to agenda item 16.2, which is pursuant to Government Code Section 54953C3. The Board of Directors provides this oral report prior to taking action on the salary schedule, and compensation paid in the form of fringe benefits paid to members of the senior management team, including the general manager and the general counsel. In accordance with those employment agreements with the general manager and general counsel, the board may authorize the same general salary increases and benefits to the general manager and general counsel as that granted to district employees at the department director level. As such, it's recommended that the general manager and the general counsel each receive a 3.7% increase in their annual salary, commensurate with the 3.7% increase being granted to all district employees in this action effective April 21st, 2025. Additionally, it's recommended that the following members of the senior management team also be granted a 3.7% increase in their current annual salary, commensurate with the increase being granted to all district employees in this action effective same date, April 21st, 2025. That is the Secretary of the District, the Director of Customer and Community Services, the Director of Engineering and Construction, the Director of Finance, the Director of Human Resources, the Director of Operations and Maintenance, the Director of Wastewater, the Director of Water and Natural Resources, Special Assistant 4 for Legislative Affairs, Special Assistant 3 for the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Culture, and Special Assistant 4 Public Affairs. The current salaries are contained in the salary schedule authorized by the board and on file with the Secretary of the District. It is also recommended that the general manager, general counsel, and the senior management team members receive the same health and fringe benefits as provided to all other district employees in this action, as modified in the MOUs to be approved by this action. Changes to the benefits include changes to the following: changes to health insurance benefits upon retirement and employee contribution rates. 2, for employees subject to the PEPRA retirement tier, an increase to the annual deferred compensation participation incentive from $1,000 to $1,600 in the 2026 and adjusted thereafter based on the Consumer Price Index. And 3, an increase in the safety shoes reimbursable amount from $265 to $285. Okay. Are there any board discussion or comments regarding items 16.1 to 16.4?
President Young, I just had one thing I just noted.
That's intentional.
It's intentional?
And then we have a public comment.
No, that's okay.
Yeah.
No.
We're good? Okay. So do we have any, we'll move on to public comment on this item. What, Jim, what?
I can go after public.
Well, no, it's board discussion. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I just want to say how much I appreciated everyone's hard work in getting to this point. I mean, whether it's our staff, my colleagues on the board, our management team, and the bargaining units. I mean, one of the things that's important to me is to make sure that we maintain positive relationships with our bargaining units. You know, you've heard the phrase labor peace. Doesn't mean one side capitulates to the other, but it means we work together with mutual respect. And I think we saw, at least I saw that happen this time. And there's so many things we need to do and work together on going forward that we got this thing resolved a lot quicker than, it's been done in the past. Well, there's 4 of us that are new in the last 2 years. So, I mean, it was really a pleasure to work with all of you. And I've been on the side when things worked well. And I've also been an observer in places where it hasn't worked well. And hopefully we were able to take some of those lessons where it hasn't worked well and put it here, like having the board, on call and have multiple meetings and be able to, come to a decision when it was necessary. So I also appreciate all the collaboration, and I'm really honored to vote for this and to get this resolved within the first, 6.5 months of our tenure. So thank you to everybody.
Yeah, I likewise want to really appreciate the efforts of all of my fellow board members in taking us on a slightly different path than we have gone in the past, and for being willing to put in, the extra time and being focused on getting it done as soon as possible to the contract deadline. I hope we can even shave a little bit of time off next time around, and really appreciate the work of the labor unions in, sitting down to the table and really working through the issues to a place where, we have an agreement that I think serves the district well, serves our ratepayers well, and yeah. Any other board member comments? We can move on to public comments. I know we have at least one speaker online.
We do.
Or did.
We do. Justin?
I'm here.
All right, go ahead. Your 3 minutes start now.
Good afternoon, President Young, Board of Directors, General Manager Chan. It took about 11 months of negotiating with the district, 44 meetings, sitting across the table with the district, Local 2019, and with the coalition. I just want to say thank you, Board of Directors, district management, for working with us to reach an agreement. I've been here for 20 plus years, and this is pretty much, even though it sounds like a long time, 11 months, this is almost like record breaking for the district. So like President Young said, I think we did learn how to work better together. And I think we are communicating better. And I really appreciate direction the district is going. I especially want to give special thanks as the president of Local 2019 to our fellow unions. The Local 2019 wants to thank 444, Local 21, and Local 39. We look forward to working, sooner than later. We know we have a 3-year contract this time, which is new. So we look forward to doing that and working with, everyone at the district. So once again, just thank you to everyone.
Okay, are there any speakers in the room? Okay. Then do I have a motion?
So moved.
And moved by Director Odie.
Second.
Is that Director Lewis saying second? Seconded by Director Lewis. All those in favor, so this is to adopt 16.1 through 16.4, everything that I read through. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Okay, that passes 6-0. Okay, we now have another slightly new item for consideration. Not new that we do regular reviews and performance reviews and evaluations with our general manager and general counsel, but we decided to put before our discussion proposed performance criteria for the upcoming evaluations of our general manager and general counsel. Copies of that staff report, including the proposed criteria, are before you. And I have Derry Moten available to assist with the discussion. You don't have a presentation though, do you, Derry? No, okay. Let me, if I can, go through the basic sort of tenets. In the past, we have heard both our general manager and general counsel, which are the two salaries that we the performance reviews that we as a board conduct, have had a, what I would call, and this is not meant to be negative at all, but sort of like the general manager and general counsel version of everything I did during my summer vacation, or the past year, and the volume of work that these two individuals do and their staffs do, and that our district does, are a little overwhelming and hard to measure, in ways that do make it challenging for us as a board. And we've had sort of a more informal way of evaluating performance. And so what we thought to do is have the general manager and general counsel basically follow the same kind of informal performance evaluation that the senior staff team go through. And for the general manager, we're proposing performance criteria that cover 9 core competency areas that reflect the complexity and breadth of their executive leadership at East Bay MUD. It includes the district's leadership competency module and leadership practices inventory. And it's intended to balance and provide a holistic evaluation of the GM's performance, ensuring a high level of accountability and decision-making, inclusive leadership, and stewardship of public resources. For the general counsel, there's 6 core competency areas that reflect legal and executive leadership, again, grounded in the district's leadership competency module and the LPI, and including criteria focused on strategic legal advisement, proactive risk management, balanced litigation strategies, efficient use of external counsel, and the development of a high-performing legal team. The competencies provide a balanced assessment of the general counsel's strategic leadership, operational impact, and support for the district's overall goals. So before we open it up to discussion by the board and comments, this is the proposed schedule for finalizing those criteria. So today is just open it up. What do folks think? Does this make sense? What do you want to add? Staff will, once we get that feedback, staff will finalize those performance criteria and bring it back to the board for our consideration and adoption at the August 12th board meeting. On August 26th, which is the following board meeting, in our closed session, we will conduct the performance evaluations for both the general counsel and the general manager, and then appoint an ad hoc committee to negotiate the amendments to the employment agreements. September 9th, this is the optimistic schedule, could get pushed. Again, in closed session, we'll provide direction on the proposed contract amendments to the ad hoc committee. And finally, at the September 23rd board meeting, consider those amendments for adoption. So that's the plan. And of course, we'll also be looking at what other general managers and general counsels get paid at other agencies, comparable agencies, et cetera. And yeah, let me open it up for comments, suggestions. Director Lewis.
Yeah, this was very thorough and very good. I have to say, and there may be some disagreement, but based on my own experience, I would like to see an additional core competency with the general counsel, just like the general manager. I'd like to see inclusive leadership. I think there are opportunities to have high-performing legal team, looking for inclusive candidates both internally and externally. I think it may be otherwise included in both the general manager and the general counsel's description somewhere, but I wonder if it's worth a call out that they provide proactive counsel and information that drives efficiencies and effectiveness.
Okay. Thank you. Everybody's otherwise all thumbs up. Derry, is there anything you want to add or share to help our thinking?
I think that you gave a great overview, and again, we tried to develop these based on kind of general public sector best practices for leadership. And again, the Leadership Practices Index is kind of our leadership model for the district. So those two components together.
Okay. There's no action item for today. So with that instruction to staff, you have a little tweaking to do, and we'll look forward to seeing it come back to us at our next board meeting. Oh, Joey, sorry.
Just briefly, I'm thinking, next time we want to do something like this, I think we should make adjustments before we agree for raises.
Before what?
The increase.
Yeah, so this is for consideration of additional salary and above, over and above the general salary increase. Is what this performance evaluation is about.
But the director makes a valid point.
Yeah, no, it's a valid point. Just for clarification purposes, this doesn't, this would be for additional compensation.
Or just
Or not.
overall performance evaluation, which also includes extension of the contract.
Right.
Just a brief comment of appreciation for having a more structured way of doing these performance evaluations. It's super helpful. So thank you all for working on this. And not having given it a ton of thought, but making sure that we are doing not just external communications, but like focusing on internal communications, making sure that everybody understands and knows about the culture that we're trying to follow internally.
I also have another question. And I'm just curious. We have 3 that we hire. So why don't we include all 3?
Are you referring to the secretary of the district?
Yes.
Yeah, so we, the only two perform, to date, the only performance evaluation that we do is for the general manager and general counsel. And typically, we have had advise and consent, if I'm not mistaken, on who the secretary of the district will be, not a formal interview process with secretary candidate. It's been a while.
We actually had a more involved role in the hiring of our current district secretary.
But it was still advising, it was still not an interview process.
I wasn't on the committee for that, so I don't recall. But I do, but what's most significantly different is that we don't annually do a performance evaluation.
It's considered an SMT position once it's there. We could review that. So maybe perhaps a topic for future consideration.
Can I just
Since
make a
typically, actually, the
clarification?
secretary does work for us, so.
Just a clarification that the board hired the 2 previous secretaries, me and Linnell Lewis. And so it was
We hired, but we did not interview.
Yes.
Oh, we
board
did, okay.
Yes.
Okay. I was a
A
newbie.
panel interview.
I just had a process-related question. So when we talk about conducting, it's going to be the 7 of us, or is there a
Yes.
facilitator? Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, it's 7 of us. And then there will be an ad hoc committee established to negotiate with the general manager and general counsel. And typically that has been the president, the vice president, and the immediate past president by convention, but not by, doesn't have to be. Okay. So is that, Director Smith, is that something you'd like to bring forward for additional, for future discussion?
Yes.
Okay.
I noticed that we have a planning, or not planning, alleged HR planning, alleged HR committee agenda item about hiring of, the hiring process for similar SMT positions, but this is related but not the same. So
I think that's the appointment.
That's a different issue that a couple of directors raised about which positions need to come to the board for appointment.
Right, or what's the process for bringing forward those positions to the board, to the board's attention and advisement? Okay, I think that's it for now. So we have a future item for consideration under whether we have a similar responsibility for the secretary of the board.
I need 2 recommendations. I asked if you looked.
And the 2 recommendations that Director Lewis suggested, which I assume will be not a problem to incorporate into the evaluation. We will now move on to agenda item 18, which is the general manager's report. And I want to, do you have to leave at what time, Director?
3.
So if you have a way to juggle so that Director Lewis can get as much out of the 13 minutes that she has left before she has to leave for a excused.
Then let's jump right into it with the customer opinion survey. And we have Adam Provalsky here from Provalsky Research to share a summary of the results from the customer opinion survey.
President Young, directors, thank you, General Manager, for introducing me. Adam Provalsky, President of Provalsky Research. We are researchers that do customer surveys, surveys on rate structures, taxation, all that kind of work, all throughout the country with hundreds of government agencies here in California, over 100 water districts in California. So kind of what we do for a living. And I'm going to present to you the data from the 2025 customer survey and our kind of key findings. This is a board presentation. There's actually thousands of pages behind this that can be looked at. So this doesn't have to be the end of our discussion on the subject. I'm going to advance here a little bit in a second, but just want to be clear about our, let's see, click the mouse first. There we go. There we go. All right. So our goals for the study here were to first measure awareness about East Bay MUD and your role in the community and customer satisfaction with your services. Also provide you insight on how to effectively message to your community and identify strengths and weaknesses where you can maybe make some improvements and do some additional outreach and education and inform the shape and the future of how you do that outreach. Let me explain that we had a survey that was highly representative of your residents within your service area. And that's different than voters. It's different than customers. It's everybody who lives within the district and inclusive of housed and unhoused, inclusive of owners and renters, of people essentially across the board, matching your census data essentially. And the goal being fully inclusive. And it was 1,200 respondents. To give you some perspective, statewide, we might do 900 or 1,000. So 1,200 within the district is very robust. We have the ability to look at this data by all kinds of demographics and geography and have really highly directional or even statistically valid data, even in the more smaller parts of the data points. The survey was offered in English, Spanish, and Chinese. You can see that 5% chose Spanish and 2% chose Chinese. That does not mean that those people don't speak English, and it doesn't mean that those people who chose English don't speak another language. It's just about preference when it comes to the survey itself. And The vast majority of respondents were online. It's just how we communicate today in 2025. But we do have to talk to people on the phone still, because that's the preference of how people like to communicate. That segment of the population prefers to communicate. And if we didn't, we wouldn't really get that part of the population. And don't be surprised that that may not necessarily be people who are older who we think maybe not tech savvy. It's also a lot of young people who won't click through to my text message because they're just too concerned about what that looks like. So there is a key component here that I want to point out here, and I'll point it out going forward, is back in 2019 and prior, the focus was really on customers, people who paid a bill essentially. Going forward from 2023 and this survey, we focused on that more inclusive, broader community of people who are users of your water, not necessarily paying a bill, not necessarily getting a newsletter from you. And that'll show up here as we go forward in certain ways, more inclusive, but also numbers could shift a little bit based upon that.
Excuse me, are we able to distinguish then whether folks who aren't paying a bill thought the water rates were okay, high, or low?
We can distinguish all those things. There are cross-tabulated data based on every factor in this survey, not just age and race and gender, but also geography, and any question within the survey can be is largely cross-tabulated. But if we don't have it already, we can cross-tabulate that and get you a very specialized report on just that subject. Absolutely. So key findings, some areas of strength, and there's a lot of data on some of these slides, so I'll speak to it quickly. Bottom line is 78% give you a high approval rating. And this is where I point out, this is not an academic exercise. That isn't a C. This is America. We don't agree on anything. So when it's 50% plus one, hallelujah. 78%, it's puppies and kittens territory, right? It's really, really strong numbers. You have a high job approval. We look just above that 78, you can see we break down the numbers just for the purpose of this slide on owners and renters, just so you can see we're looking at those numbers. And you'll see some differences among renters. And one of the key factors is renters are in a lot of cases not getting your direct communications from, let's say, insert in the bill or some kind of other communication. They're oftentimes not as connected. And that's something I think your staff might look at going forward to reach out to them in more capacity. The other thing I'll point out here is the delta. Obviously, there's 8.4% who say that you're doing a poor job. I assume you want that number to be lower, but there's going to be a whole group of people that are never going to give you a high rating. You're a government agency. We're supposed to think you're doing something wrong. We've been told that. We're being constantly told that. So you're not going to have that number go to zero. But the delta between those numbers, almost 8 to 1, really massive. Also on the unsure, I'll point out here, that's not me not doing my job. That's a whole lot of people thinking that they just don't think about you. They don't have context for it. You're not in their consideration set. They're going to school, they're going to work, they're picking their kid up from soccer. This is not what they're thinking about in this building. And that's okay. Presumably that number can go down as you do more outreach and education. We do track the numbers over time, and I'll try to move quickly through the next slides, but just so you can see, you are maintaining your job approval. And I do put that line after 2019 to show that, in this case, your numbers have improved, even though we're taking that more inclusive approach. So next up is trust. The public does not have to trust you. I assume you want them to trust you, but this question that we ask, and I'll read it, do you trust that EBMUD makes smart decisions about your water and sewer services? They don't have an intimate relationship with you that maybe you perhaps hope they do, but yet they have come to the conclusion that they trust the decisions you're making. That should hopefully give some sense to staff and your field team that people, maybe they want to live up to that standard, and that you really are doing a good job to the point of where they do trust you. Numbers off a little bit from the previous year. There's a reality that I'll speak to going forward, but all government, as I said, is being all institutions are somewhat under attack these days. And so the fact that you are largely maintaining is a really strong place to be. And it's not like they're saying they don't trust you. It's saying they're unsure. And that's just something that's happening across the board in America today. Moving to quality of service, on the left side, you got 62% saying that they're satisfied with your ensuring high quality drinking water. And on the right, you've got this towering number, 84% saying they think the quality of your drinking water is excellent or good. And you can see there a 10% drop among renters, right? They're not having that engagement as the people who are owners necessarily, because maybe not getting that bill. So pointing out that there's opportunity there among renters, and we'll talk maybe a little more about that going forward. Here we talk about construction communication. I was talking earlier with Kelly in her office and talking about the fact that, right, this might be one of the only touch points that you have, other than maybe getting a bill, with the district. And that's, maybe something of point of frustration where I'm not being able to park in my parking spot, or I'm, not being able to make a left turn or something. And yet, they say that among the people who've had some experience with construction, big jump there of 63% or 64% saying that you're doing a great job with communication. Presumably, again, a chance for, could we have that number go up more in the future? I'm sure, but you're really having a strong sense here when it comes to construction outreach and communication. Continuing improvement when it comes to customer service. This is among the people who've reached out to customer service in some capacity. You have 92% saying they are doing a good or an excellent job. This is one of those ones you pin to the break room in the call center. And this is just a strong number and represents that upward curve as well. Should be heartening to staff and to the board. We have a discussion here about potable and non-potable recycled water. We do give them, not on this page, a little preamble explaining what each is. And you see here that there isn't a high level of concern with the use of non-potable or potable water. And in the potable water example, we do say, we talk about wastewater, right? We're talking about that whole concept of delivering back their wastewater to them and the whole process it goes through, and they're okay with it. These are numbers that we see similar in other parts of the state where pure water is kind of coming online or being contemplated. So,
so you are seeing this around the state. It's like consumer, what we attribute is being a problem actually isn't a problem anymore.
There is a absolute need for significant outreach on this subject as you start to build a system like this. But yes, there is a sense that I get it. It's being done in Orange County. It's being done in Israel. It's being done in Australia, right? All these places are already doing it for decades and decades. They're okay with it, but absolutely, big outreach has to happen on this subject as you start to roll it out. Don't want to be misguided on that. We talk about messages. We present messages about what you all do, and this is a small sampling of those messages, and whether it makes people more supportive or more favorable towards the district or not. And these are the ones that kind of, if I'm a board member, I'd probably want to keep this in my pocket, because if I'm talking to the public, I'm going to mention these 4 things because it really makes you have an opportunity to have a connection with your public. So 1, you prepared for the dry years and you were able to meet demand during those years. They really appreciate this. They think this is a big part of what you should do, and they have a better, more favorable impression of you because of that. Similar numbers, essentially no real difference. You're preparing for earthquakes. You've got this emergency preparedness, and you're doing the work to make sure you're in a strong position if that happens. You're pursuing innovative technologies, and that goes for a bunch of different things we mentioned to them, but anything that's kind of, a computer involved, a new technology, they're appreciating that you're doing that. They like you being future oriented. And then the fact that you manage these thousands of acres, 57,000 acres of watershed lands, reservoirs, recreation, and water quality. You're doing this work and they get to access a lot of it. They really like that from an environmental standpoint and from a recreation standpoint. So these are all things that could really make you have a stronger connection with your public as you talk about them. These are all newsletter topics, social media topics, and of course, opportunity to speak to the public directly. After we mention all these things, and there's other messages involved, we get to a place where your approval rating comes up. And obviously, I'm assuming that's a number you like to see. And one of the key factors here is what that tells us is the more you tell your message, the more you outreach, the better impression you have from your public. So, you know, more budget for outreach, probably a good idea. But just in general, as you talk more and say the good things you're doing, they're really going to connect with that, and they appreciate that. So areas of improvement. We always want to make sure we're looking to the future and how we can make things a little bit better, perhaps. We do have a question here, and there's a lot of data on this slide about, have you heard anything lately about the district? And right now that number is 43% say yes, plurality at 45% say no. You can see there's a big delta there between the renters and the owners. So, and just so you know, renters represent about 45% of your residents. So they really have a big impact here on these numbers. And there's also a divide there, east of Hills, west of Hills, where we show that, where west of Hills has a greater understanding, and there's logic there, right? A lot more single-family homes and things like that. These numbers since 2019 have come down a bit, not dramatically, but a real opportunity to pump those. Yes, please.
Well, we were in drought from 2015 through 2019.
Yes.
So people heard from us a whole lot.
Exactly.
And I have not so much. I mean, we've been fortunate through COVID and since to be not in the situation of telling people about what they should or should not do with their water.
President Young, you brought my talking point before I did, so thank you very much for pointing that out. Absolutely. A lot more communication happens during a drought, so different times and different resources expended. Going to this slide and a lot of data here. So we asked them about their bill, the numbers suggest that 46% say their bill is too high. Not a terribly different number, 41%. If you're looking at that first column in each of these scenarios, 41% say it's just about right. So it's not like these numbers are way out of whack, that there's a massive majority who's upset about pricing. The big group of people think it's either just about right or they pay less than they expect, actually, and some people who are unsure. What we did here is do an A-B split sample. On the left side, we just said, how do you feel about what you pay for water? The right side was a second group of people who we told them it costs about 2 cents a gallon. And when we do that, more people say, 43% say their bill's just about right, compared to 40% who say their bill's too high. So when you contextualize it, when they understand that the cost is not maybe perhaps what it was in their head initially, they all of a sudden have a higher appreciation for the bill, for what they pay, and think it's just about right. That requires a whole lot of outreach to educate on what the cost of water is, but it gives you an opportunity to know, okay, we can absolutely put ourselves in a stronger position and absolutely put people in a place where they understand the cost and appreciate the value if you have the opportunity to do that outreach and message.
This finding is really helpful. The finding about the split sample is really helpful for our outreach and education, but my question, I think, has to do with the trend. And there's a couple stories that I could imagine that I'm asking for you to provide some context about. We have a dip. You could tell the story in terms of 2025 is really just a continuation of 2019, and 2023 is the anomaly. That's one possible story. Another possible story is that there really was a difference in customer perception in 2023. But life has changed, not just because of EBMUD, because of other bigger economic factors affecting customers in 2025. Which not just to pick one, but which of those stories make sense, and are there other stories that help explain the 2025 split sample A number?
Thank you, Director. I'll give you two stories. One is certainly inflation. The reality of prices going up overall, not just water, but overall prices are going up. And almost as important, and I don't want to be dismissive of the impact of cost and inflation, but almost as important is the narrative. that we are all hearing that says costs are out of control, that says government is charging us too much, that says supermarkets are charging too much. And so there is a reality of prices going up, but there's even a bigger narrative around the fact that we're hearing it in a way that I think is quite negative. So I don't dismiss people who may have concerns over costs, but really it's the national narrative that the media is talking about more than anything else. Moving to water use, bottled water versus in-home, versus tap water. So first I'll contextualize this by saying that these numbers were among people who say they use bottled water daily or to occasionally. So it's everybody is involved in this conversation, in these answers. So at home, you've got 57% who say they consume bottled water. And then out of home, you've got that big number, 80% say they consume bottled water. And again, this could be once a month, but they're included in this conversation because we want to have some next steps with them. We asked them, why are you using bottled water? Well, you can see right there, 63% say for convenience. There's an element of 21% who say it's for water quality and then for taste. We're going to get to water quality in a second. But as you can see, there's a high adoption of bottled water use, no more so than any other agency we work with. So, but it is a big number there. When we tell them about bottled water and the fact that it's just rebottled tap water, there's not a lot of regulation around it, you're paying a whole lot more for it, dramatically more for it. You've got 46% that say, yeah, I'm less likely to use bottled water based upon those messages. If that is a priority of the district, well, then you get to talk about that and change the behavior. We do a lot of work on behavioral change, and this is, pretty clear data that gets to have you make that behavioral change if that's a desire of the agency. You've got a strong place to start from. Next, we have two questions here juxtaposed, and the data is essentially kind of counter to each other. One is, are you aware of this idea that you've got to have 2 gallons per day per person, not including pets, stored in case of an emergency? And 57% say, yeah, I'm aware of it. Now, that's nowhere near a number you perhaps might want it to be to have real security, but it's a good foundational place to be. And it's okay if they're unsure because that could be a spouse who doesn't know and doesn't have the planning process, or another person in the household that doesn't have control over that. On the other hand, household emergency preparedness, we asked them, well, do you think you're prepared if you have 7 days without running water in an emergency? And most people say no, they don't agree that they're prepared. So you've got this, I think I know what I'm supposed to do, but I'm not really doing it kind of a scenario. And again, this is probably one of those things in the category of behavioral change. If this is a policy decision, a directive from this that comes out of this building, well then that's an opportunity to hopefully improve those numbers. So we have kind of an upward trajectory of preparedness if we do this in a year or 2 or 5, opportunities there. And then, I'm sorry, Director.
I've long been concerned about the predictable, and repeated answers to this question over the years. And this is the worst, preparedness that has been indicated from this type of question that I've ever seen. I think prior answers were closer to the 50% line in terms of not prepared. And I wonder, is that because we are asking some of the indicators slightly differently in this round of the question? And I don't know when we might have changed. In the past, we had been pegging a range of 1 to 2 gallons per day. I think in the past, we may have also been talking more towards 5 days, or a range of 5 to 7 days. And I don't know when we might have shifted our public messaging and when we might have shifted this question. It's better to get if we know that this is what we really need the public to be prepared with, we should be measuring against that. It does make comparability across the years a little harder to interpret. That's something to, just take note of, that we have a big gap in preparedness. This should be one of the questions that keeps us up late at night. Not that there's anything that we would, we just would understand that our ability to get back to service as quick as possible remains ever so important, and our ability to coordinate with local emergency authorities to mitigate the impacts from this issue, are important. And in advance, our public messaging needs to take note of how big a gap we have in preparedness. Are there any other crosstabs or stories that you gathered from the data?
Yes, so two things there. First, through staff, we'll look at the questions over the course of time and see if there's something we can read into that for you and get back to you. The second thing is, absolutely, we did have a follow-up question as to why. And we asked them what it was. And there were some things at the top of the list, like I don't have space or I don't have time. Some things that you probably don't have control over, but there are other things in there that you may actually have, like cost and perhaps there's support levels there and things like that. So there are things that in those in the follow-up question and crosstabs that may give us an opportunity to incrementally improve these numbers.
Yeah, and the crosstabs could also help us identify who is most likely to be prepared Absolutely. Or not prepared, so we can target messaging for improvement.
Absolutely. We ask people if they know they can sign up for alerts, whether it's for construction or outages or whatever it might be for other information, and most people say no. Again, I come back to the fact that 35% saying yes is actually a pretty impressive number. They're not thinking about you. So the fact that 35% have enough consciousness and connection to actually say, yes, I knew I could do that, is a good number. Presumably, over time, we can have those numbers come up, but most people just aren't, doing that. And again, there could be, multiple people in a household where one is signed up and other people just don't know. Okay, this is a very topical question. We injected because we had a sense, and I think staff had a sense, that the public doesn't know that water systems are not designed to fight wildfires in the capacity of something we saw, let's say, in Los Angeles most recently. And just giving some context to that, this gives us a sense that no, they don't know that that's how water systems are designed. And we'll talk later about opportunities to what to do with this data. But the plurality does not know your kind of role in that process. We do have some specific recommendations that we want to bring. These are developed in coordination with staff. We want to identify areas of lower awareness for East Bay MUD and for focused messaging and outreach. As the director just pointed out, there's multiple opportunities there. Highlight completed projects, infrastructure investments, and community benefits to build trust. This is something we see not just in East Bay MUD, but all throughout the state. When you talk about the physical plant of what you do, when I see you spending millions of dollars on something that I can see and feel and touch, I feel more trust for you, kind of speaking on behalf of the residents. So talking more about those things really matters. And then continuing to reinforce the high quality of tap water compared to bottled water and, quite frankly, the cost difference. And then additionally, addressing concerns about rate increases, and that comes from explaining that value of water and giving them some perspective on cost. There's definitely opportunities to target messaging on emergency preparedness and the role of the district when it comes to wildfires, and essentially your coordination with your partners, like city, county, fire, things like that, to really kind of drive home the actions you're taking based upon what's happening in the world, and also the constraints that you have based upon what the water system's design. And then some clear, consistent messaging about safety and treatment involving non-potable and potable water as you contemplate what comes in the future from there, and just reinforcing that as that story comes online for you all is really going to be important and helpful. Here we go. Some other next steps here. We, in our original proposal and working with staff, are going to have a kind of a unique next step, and that is street-level interviews that are actually going to be one-to-one, face-to-face with a particular population to maybe get a little better understanding of them. And our group contemplated right at the moment, because we see so many differences in percentages, is renters. People who are just not as connected to you. So our intention is to do those street-level interviews with renters throughout the district, and we'll certainly, through staff, report back on the findings from that and our plan for that. We expect that staff's going to incorporate the findings and recommendations into the strategic planning process and the strategic communication planning. And then do further analysis on the data to enhance outreach to these lower awareness communities. We know who they are. We know how to reach them. We know how to target them. We know where they get their news and information. So it's not a huge lift. It's just a targeting of that effort. And then enhancing messaging on water quality, infrastructure investment, and emergency preparedness, kind of driving those messages home. I know I said a lot of words. That's a lot of data. As I said, there's all those crosstabs behind, and then literally, I think, thousands of pages, including the open-ended responses, that we find to be really interesting and helpful. You can look and see the words people said responding to open-ended responses, and we overlay their demographics so you get the experience of who that person is and their experience in life as you read through them. We are by no means done with our work. We continuously work with staff throughout the year. I want to very much thank Kelly Zito and her whole team. Really a pleasure working with your staff, and happy to take questions now or through staff, for the rest of time.
Questions? Would it be possible to get ward-specific data?
Absolutely. It's in the full reporting, and we can, it's in the presentation itself, the full presentation, and I'm happy to have one-on-one conversation or whatever that might be to give each of you a more comfort level with that data. Absolutely.
And can you, do you have the trend line for the question that Director Katz brought up, which I honestly did not recall the characterization of a sort of significant departure, just sort of the emergency preparedness, has it gone up dramatically? And maybe it was in the staff report and I didn't get to it. And then how that compares to the information from other surveys that we're seeing from cities. To me, as a lifelong Bay Area resident, I'm not surprised at all by those numbers. In any case, it'd be interesting, as we decide what our outreach is or should be, whether we're, how hard upstream we're swimming to increase that number.
Yeah, we'll absolutely develop that and bring it back to you.
There were a couple of instances where I wished that I would have had a longer trend line, specifically around like our performance, that question about like, how are we doing? Because I know last year we heard about how we did the previous year, but now I'm realizing, I really want to know how we're doing since we started asking, how are we doing in the last 5 years? I would be curious about that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think the reason we didn't was interest of all that stuff on the slide, but absolutely, we have data going back many more years. 2002.
That would be super interesting. Yeah.
You can go first.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, so I agree with Director Gomez on that. I heard your comment about the media and what's happening out there kind of get people all riled up that, that all places that you have to pay a bill are bad, right? So what are you suggesting that we do to make what we are doing much more obvious and to encourage them to be more receptive of the information we get? Because if they say that they trust us,
right?
Because I gotta say, folks, even though I drive and I see the billboards, in some little tucked away spots that one might not know about unless you're in that neighborhood. So, you know, it's like, okay, cool. Others that are way out there. But also I take public transportation. I see the advertisements on the buses and on the BART trains and at the bus shelters and whatnot. And I actually have had, even before I got on this board, I've had people say, hey, you work for East Bay Mud, right? How come they don't have your picture up there? It's like, well, no, I don't need that, but I'm glad that people are seeing it. So I don't know if it's because I've been very open with people, the fact that I work for East Bay Mud throughout my entire career, and maybe that brings their attention to things, or what. But in the meantime, if you're saying that there's much larger, more multiple, and much louder trying to convince people to think a certain way, how do we break through that?
So foundationally, what you said is accurate, right? That you have a foundation of trust that you can build off of. So that's a strong place to be. The two things that we've already kind of mentioned, but I think you combine them together, can really put you in a stronger position. And that is explaining that cost value scenario. And we discovered one way of describing that, right? It's 2 cents per gallon, and they can contextualize that to, you know, anything else in their lives. That's a really good value. So driving that message home, and to the extent that that's an important thing, we could do other research on that subject as well and bring in other information. And then, as I said, talking about the physical things that you do, and like the open space and that you manage, and talking about those things that are tangible to people. Both those things, the value you provide costs, which is, you know, significantly lower than pretty much anything else that they buy, and the real work you do, because it's very easy for the mind to go towards salaries and bureaucracy versus the reality of where your real dollars go, and that is pipes and plants and pump stations and things like that. And so when you put those two things together with your skilled communication and outreach teams, they can really make those numbers move significantly and reinforce that positive impression of the district.
Okay, thank you.
I have one quick question. Yeah. Thanks. So on the previous slide, so your third bullet point on analyzed data.
You just turned it off.
You can hear me, right?
Yes.
Okay. So what are like the top lower awareness communities? If you can just rattle off.
So we presented it all throughout, and that was
renters.
Renters, for
I heard
sure.
that.
In front of me, I don't have necessarily much else to say. There are, on different questions, different audiences that we would look to target for different things. So for instance, on construction, there might be one audience. On water quality, there might be another. So I don't have one that I'm just gonna pull out and say everybody, but what's great about the cross-tabulated data is we know on every given message, we can target a certain community. And it's not just, you know, Asians, and not just people under 29. It's not for anything particular. If we design a plan of action for any demographic or any concern, it would be a compiled group of demographic. It could be college, non-college, or something like that. And we put that all together and say, okay, this is the community of interest we're going to pursue.
Did you see like commonalities across all wards in the whole service area, or like some wards have, you know, more lower aware of renters than others, or just to pick out renters or under 29 or whatever?
The other group that we specifically highlighted, because we identified it, was east of Hills and west of Hills. And there are remarkable differences in demographics in those two groups. There's district-wide, you have a higher college rate than most of other California, so that's not so starkly different. But you know, type of home is definitely a part of it, and you have many more single-family homes in you know, west of Hill or east of Hills, and some other demographics. You also have a less diverse population east of Hills, so there are things there that do come into play.
But there's some west of Hills, like, for example, the wastewater plant. If you live near there, you're going to be 100% aware of East Bay mud as opposed to, you know, if you live 30 miles away and don't even know where it is. Okay, thanks.
I had a couple of other things that, you know, maybe next year that we're not as we recently stepped up stepped up into doing more education, K-12 especially, and I'm wondering if there's some way to, you know, sort of check for that next time around, to see if that's penetrating at all. And then the second area, another area that we've been focusing a lot on is increasing awareness and sign up for our consumer assistance program or customer assistance program. And so I'm wondering about, you know, that, do people, you know, sort of in tandem with are your rates too high? It's like, can you afford it? And to see, you know, sort of see whether people are aware of our customer assistance program or not. And maybe there's you know, maybe it's a different survey, I don't know, but.
So on both that subject, we've had the pleasure of working with this district specifically on that quick K-12 component and kind of understanding that, how to build out that. So we have some data not from this survey on that subject, and certainly it's something we'll note for future for maybe seeing if we can identify that through the broader base survey that we do. And then as far as customer assistance, there was some queries within the survey on that subject in general, including people willing to contribute towards their neighbors. And so that data, while not in this presentation, is in there and something we can definitely have a broader conversation about.
Okay, thank you.
Quick question about, since this survey in itself is helping to move public opinion, at least of those who take the survey, right? I wonder if we've considered adding a few more questions about, or helping to educate folks about our environmental stewardship. I know it is the 57-acre question being mentioned, but I don't know if we do more than that, like, you know, all of our climate change work and our carbon footprint work, our solar panels, our salmon returns, something that would help educate the community that takes the survey about, like, oh, this is in our DNA, you know?
Yeah, I mean, my first, as the researcher in me, has to say this, and that is, we don't intend to educate with the research. Now, people may learn something over the course of taking it, but that's not our goal, right? Our goal is to get pure data back. And so, broadly though, yes, there's very high support for the questions we do ask. It really engenders support for you all with that. And we see that broadly throughout California when we talk about agencies like yours, pretty much any of your environmental stewardship programs and plans, people really are connected to them and appreciate them. So even if we don't have that question here, I can tell you that people, and especially your district, are going to be supportive of that. I think I'll take some responsibility for the fact that, you know, we don't get to ask 100 questions, and so we have to collectively decide what are in there, but I think we'll certainly make a note for the future for maybe what else we can ask on that subject matter.
And I have a suggestion, which may be totally crazy, but what if we were to raffle, given that so few people are prepared for earthquakes in terms of water or for emergencies, what if we were to raffle off like 5-gallon containers for one person per ward, you know, in some kind of contest, and at least it would like get the buzz going. Like, this is what it takes. You have to be able to store 5-gallon waters if you're a 2-person household, you know. Anyway, it's a thought of something that we can consider doing down the road.
Okay.
Come in with a couple quick things. Yeah, I'm very interested in the follow-up report, and I'm gathering that from other directors' comments that will, like we've reviewed in the past, be able to see crosstabs and the other questions in the survey that weren't highlighted in the presentation. And you know, there's certain, yeah, you know, I'll look to your further highlighting about what, which samples, are the crosstabs really the most significant in terms of learning about the subdemographics that really are of note. There's some questions that, seem to deviate a little bit, like the trusting we make smart decisions about water and sewer services compared to the overall satisfaction has a pretty big variance. But I am interested in, not necessarily, I am interested in who disagrees, in trust in us, but I'm more interested in who's not sure, especially given that the unsure group rose by, from 21 to 29% on slide 5. And then on the, along with President Young's question about affordability, I think that, did we have demographic information about income in the survey?
We do, yes.
Okay. Yeah, understanding the income crosstabs could be very important for the feeling of the bill being too high. And, I don't presume that it goes in one direction or the other. It could actually be that higher income or middle income households feel just as squeezed as lower income households. I'm interested in seeing what we can learn from crosstabs like that.
You're absolutely correct, Director Katz. We find in some of our most affluent communities that the concern over rates is much higher than it is in other places. And it's just probably a greater consciousness of the news necessarily than it is anything else. Not a representation of their actual concern over the cost. It's more the concern over the narrative is what we find. Yeah.
Thanks. Looking forward to seeing the broader report. Thank you.
Thank you.
So with respect to the report, I mean, we just noted in the memo that if you want a copy, just reach out to me, but I can just send it to everybody too. So
Can you just drop it in the OneDrive?
we could do that. We can provide the copy.
We'll follow up.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Next up.
Yeah, so in your packet is the perspective and retrospective look at board committees, workshops, and events. Also in there is the monthly report, and at your places, the Speakers Bureau, and I can answer any questions, but otherwise I'm done with my reports.
Okay. Is there any public comment on item 18, which includes the customer opinion survey?
None.
Okay.
One quick question.
Yeah.
How long did it take them to get this together?
David, how long did it take to do this project?
A 3-week period in May, right, that you did the survey?
23 days.
23 days.
To be clear, we sent mail. So we sent mail, we called, we emailed, we texted. The mail allowed people to use a QR code to get online, to put in a URL to get to their survey experience, or to call us 24/7 to make the call. And again, even though it was only maybe a very small handful of people, those people wouldn't have responded to us if they couldn't give us that call. So yeah, it was a kind of inclusive in that capacity. But yeah, and then the survey itself.
12 minutes, I think it says.
Did it say 12 minutes?
Yeah.
Yeah, and we tend to look to keep surveys under 20 minutes. 15 is even better. So 12 it wasn't taxing. I'll put that on your residents. It was
I'm just saying, I think that it's wonderful that you're able to get as many people to participate as you do, because my phone is perpetually being bombarded with questionnaires, surveys, and all this other stuff. And I have no idea who they are, how they got my information. And, it's like, no, delete, report as junk. And so that's why I'm just thinking, man, okay, this is great that you've got folks. I know that we only have 7 districts. Do you spread it out among each district, Or do you like hit spots and then the next time around you maybe hit different spots, or what?
Yeah, so in the vein of being matching census, we look at each of the districts, the divisions, and we match population-wise to the whole area. So each of the districts or each of the wards.
Yeah, wards. Yeah.
So and it's a random, essentially a random stratified random sample is what we call it. So we are taking, the full data of, the million, whatever, 1.4 million people, and we are taking every nth person that we're trying to reach within that data, and then also building out the cells of demographics within that. So it should be within a percentage point or two representative geographically of the district and each of the wards as well.
Yeah, I don't know, just the term random, I back in the day when they were first starting to, pat folks down when you were on the airport. It's just like, seemed like I was always in the random pool. And when it's time for the random checks for the DOT, it's like I got picked a few times where I was just like, wait a minute, I just did this last month. How's this still random? So I just, it's interesting how we manage to get the information that we get.
To give maybe a little more confidence in how that process works, people respond to surveys for different reasons. They're interested in the subject matter. Some people think it's their civic duty. We find that some people are bored and they want to talk to us. So there's different reasons, but in our work to make sure we are fully representative, it's hard sometimes, right? I've got to build out that cell of, African American women who make more than $250,000 a year, who, live east of Hills, who, each one of those demographics, right? That is not an easy cell to meet always, and we got to keep calling, talking to people, emailing them, and this time we didn't have to, but knocking on doors if we need to. So we are building those out to be fully representative to make sure.
Okay, well, I'll look for the day when I get something in the mail from you.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
Okay, items for future consideration, we've identified a couple today. If there's anything else, please drop them to myself and the general manager. We're now on to director comments. Jim?
You can go first.
Okay, I'll go real fast.
Okay.
So I attended on June 30th, the Walnut Creek Water Treatment Plant Project update with residents of the neighborhood. On July 4th, I attended the Danville Parade, where there were about 40,000 people who attended the parade. And on July 8th, tonight, I'm attending the San Ramon City Council meeting, giving an East Bay Mud update.
Okay.
Okay.
Jim?
Thank you. On the 25th of June, attended the Bayside Community Meeting. I don't see anyone in staff that was here, but there was a lot of staff people there, and they did an amazing job, so appreciate the update to the community on the Bayside project. July 4th, attended the Alameda 4th of July Parade, the biggest parade west of the Mississippi, so we're very proud of that. I want to give a big thanks to Warren Story, who drove the truck, and also I was honored to have our former board member, Doug Linney, and his band perform. Dave is here, he was in that band, it was really great. I got no booze, so I think that was because I was with East Bay Mud, and it was like, yeah, East Bay Mud, we love our water. So I had a non-scientific study that backed up what this study we just heard about said. So, and then Sun Quan also participated in that. I think Doug played the guitar and he sang. And then there were two other, we all got waivers, it's all good. But I appreciate everyone, and it was really nice to participate with Director Linney.
I also participated in the Orinda 4th of July parade without my granddaughter this year, which is probably good because we had to stay in the truck. We didn't have any swag. Joe, I need to talk to you. But thank you for supporting that. I had Ranger Chris McCarty with me. We had a great visit as always. Looking forward to a new truck next year, maybe some other embellishments. The parade was very well attended, same as Jim. Lots of people saying, "Yay, East Bay Mud!" And I think it was twice as big as last year, probably in terms of attendance, and twice as many floats. Orinda's celebrating their 40th anniversary, which, you know, good for them. They decided, the city council decided they might not be around by the time they get to 50. And so they had a cable car. It was great. That's it for my report. Andy, if you had anything to add?
I am looking forward to a presentation to the Berkeley Neighborhoods Council this weekend, and tour of the wastewater treatment plant with Berkeley Mayor Adina Ishii next week. And those are my upcoming activities. Nothing to report on the last couple weeks.
Okay. With that, we are adjourned with the note that we will be on recess between July 9th and August 11th. However, there still is a retirement board meeting on Thursday, which I and General Manager Chan, and I'm assuming Director Chan will be attending. And our next regular board meeting will be Tuesday, August 12th, 2025 at 1:15. Our meeting is now adjourned.